I am standing in front of our bathroom mirror, trying to remember when things first started to feel wrong. There's a crack in the glass, a thin line running from the corner down to the base, and I stare at it, trying to pull my mind away from the thoughts swirling inside me. But it is no use. They are always there now, buzzing like a swarm of flies I cannot escape. Sarah has been different lately. She used to leave her phone on the kitchen counter, the screen lighting up with text notifications from friends or work. Now it is always face down. When I asked her why, she gave me a quick laugh and said, "I just do not want to be distracted." It seemed innocent enough at the time. I nodded and tried to ignore the small knot in my stomach, but now it feels bigger, twisting tighter every day. The signs are everywhere, if I am willing to look. I tell myself it is nothing, but deep down, I know better. She spends more time on her phone, texting with someone she never talks about. She goes out more, saying she is meeting up with friends, but when I ask which ones, her answers are vague. "You do not know them," she says, brushing off the question with a smile that no longer reaches her eyes. I have tried to convince myself that I am being paranoid, that I am imagining things. But then there was last Tuesday. We had planned to have dinner together, something we had not done in a while because of her new job and her long hours. I had made her favorite, spaghetti carbonara, and set the table. I was actually excited to have a quiet evening with her. But when she came home, she was distracted, her mind clearly elsewhere. She hardly ate, picking at her food, and when I asked about her day, she snapped. "Why do you always need to know everything?" Her voice was sharp, cutting through the room like a knife. I was stunned. Sarah had never spoken to me like that before. My mind reeled, trying to figure out what I had done wrong. Had I pushed too hard? Was she just stressed from work? But even as I tried to reason with myself, I could feel the gap between us growing wider, something shifting in our relationship that I could not quite put into words. And then, the moment that changed everything. It was Friday night, and she told me she was going out with friends again. I did not argue this time, just nodded and said, "Have fun." But after she left, I could not shake the uneasy feeling gnawing at my chest. Something was wrong. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my car keys, not even sure what I was planning to do, only that I had to see where she was going. I followed her to a small Italian restaurant downtown, the kind of place we used to go to when we first started dating. She was not meeting friends. She was meeting him. He was tall, with dark hair and a smile that made my stomach turn. They sat across from each other, leaning in close, their hands brushing across the table. She was laughing, the kind of laugh I had not heard from her in months. My chest tightened, and for a moment, I could not breathe. It felt like the world had cracked open beneath me, and I was falling into an abyss with no bottom in sight. I wanted to walk in there, confront her, demand an explanation. But I did not. I stood there, frozen, watching as she reached out and touched his hand, her fingers lingering a moment too long. That was all the confirmation I needed. The knot in my stomach unraveled, and all that was left was a hollow emptiness I could not fill. I drove home in silence, the weight of what I had seen pressing down on me. My mind was racing, replaying every conversation we had had in the last few months, every moment that had felt off. It all made sense now. The late nights, the secret texts, the way she had pulled away from me bit by bit until there was nothing left between us but a fragile shell of what we used to be. That night, I could not sleep. I kept seeing her with him, the way she smiled at him, the way her hand rested so comfortably in his. I wondered how long it had been going on. Was it just a fling? Or was it something more? The questions spiraled in my head, each one more painful than the last. The next morning, I confronted her. I tried to keep my voice calm, but I could hear the tremor in it, the anger bubbling just beneath the surface. "Who is he?" I asked. Her face went pale. She opened her mouth to speak but then closed it again like she was searching for the right words. "It is not what you think," she finally said, but her voice was shaky, uncertain. "Do not lie to me, Sarah. I saw you with him last night. I followed you." Her eyes widened in shock, and for a moment I thought she might deny it. But then she looked away, unable to meet my gaze. "I did not mean for it to happen," she whispered. It just did. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I wanted to scream at her, to demand answers, to make her feel the pain she had caused me. But all I could do was stand there, numb, as she tried to explain. It started a few months ago, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I was feeling lost, and he made me feel seen. I do not know how to explain it. I never wanted to hurt you. I wanted to laugh, to tell her how ridiculous that sounded. How could she say she did not want to hurt me when she had been lying to me for months, sneaking around behind my back, betraying everything we had built together? But I could not find the words. The betrayal was too deep, the wound too fresh. All I could do was stand there, staring at the woman I thought I knew, the woman who had shattered my heart into 1,000 pieces. She tried to apologize, to tell me that she would end it, that we could work through it. But I could not hear her anymore. All I could see was her with him, laughing, touching, living a life I was no longer a part of. I packed my bags that night. As I walked out the door, I looked back at her one last time. Her face was streaked with tears, but there was something else in her eyes too. Relief. That was when I realized the truth. It was not just the cheating that had ended us, it was the fact that she had already moved on. I was just the last one to know. The pieces had been falling apart for months, but I had been too blind to see them. Too hopeful that we could fix what was broken. But now, there was nothing left to fix. And as I drove away, the weight of it all finally hit me. The woman I loved was gone, and in her place was a stranger I no longer recognized.